Hello, welcome to this week's whiteboard learning. Today we're going to be talking about the kidney values that are on the iStat, and those are the BUN and creatinine. So let's talk about those. So the BUN stands for blood, urea, nitrogen. And sometimes you see it as BUN, sometimes you see it in Europe as SUN, serum urea nitrogen. And creatinine, you have to differentiate from creatine, and we'll get to that. So what are these chemicals? Well, both of these are byproducts of protein metabolism that are filtered by your kidneys and then go into the urine and that go out in your pee. And so they are waste products that need to be gotten rid of. And it's pretty easy to follow what happens when the kidneys don't work and you can't get rid of them. Both of them will rise. So the take-home message for today is that these are related to the kidney's function most of the time. So let's start from the beginning a little bit. So you eat protein. So you eat a steak. Let's make a little T-bone steak. And it is metabolized in your gut, and then the proteins go to your liver, and your liver has to deal with the big protein and make them into small proteins called amino acids, and there's a byproduct of nitrogen. Nitrogen is a bad guy and can become ammonia and other bad things, so it is transformed to urea. And urea is then put into the bloodstream and sent to the kidneys. And the kidneys are kind of interesting with urea. So if you think about your kidneys, there's two layers. There's the cortex and the medulla. And you start with a glomerulus that filters, right? That's the little coffee filter, and sends out a loop. You remember Lupa Henley? That's in one of your biology things. And the loop then makes the urine, helps get the urine out, and then the urine would come out the kidney. Basically, what's interesting about urea is not only excreted out through the glomerulus and then not reabsorbed. Some of it's reabsorbed, but if there's extra, not reabsorbed. But some of it, as I said, is reabsorbed. And so urea is actually really important in the kidney to help keep a concentration gradient, where it's more concentrated up here and then gets more dilute. And that's the countercurrent multiplier. So urea has an extra bit of a job here in the kidney. But basically, 50% of the urea that comes through the bloodstream and goes into the glomerulus and the nephron gets put out into the urine. Now, what's the problem? Well, if you eat more protein, that can falsely make your BUN go up. So if all you ate were the keto diet, you could make your BUN go up. The other way that you can do that, eat a lot of protein, is have GI hemorrhage, so gut bleeding. So one of the ways to falsely increase this is to have gut bleeding or GI hemorrhage, because you're basically having a blood meal. The other way is if the liver can't do its job, it can't transform the nitrogen to urea. So you actually have a false low BUN with liver disease because the liver isn't doing its job. So those are the ways that it gets affected sort of just by itself. Now what about creatinine? Well, creatinine, instead of being some of the other proteins in your body, creatinine is your own protein. So in your muscle, and this is how it relates to creatine, creatine is a protein in your muscle. So you have a muscle fiber that can contract, and it's got creatine all in it. And about 2% of all the creatine each day is turned over. You know, sort of fixing your body before it's broken kind of thing, maintenance. So the creatine is released into creatinine. So, you know, some bodybuilders take creatine that helps build muscle, but creatinine is a breakdown product of that. Now, what's interesting about creatinine is that creatinine goes to the kidney and is freely filtered in the glomerulus and is freely let go. So it is not changed at all. It doesn't help any countercurrent multiplier. It isn't resorbed partially like BUN. Blood meal does not affect it. Really, it's a measure of your lean body mass. And so it's pretty constant from day to day. It doesn't change very quickly. So if it's super low, maybe you don't have any muscle in your body. Remember, think of that 17-year-old cat. Doesn't have very much muscle. So its creatinine might be low just because it has no body mass. But really doesn't go high if you're a bodybuilder, but it can be kind of low. I guess if you ate too much creatine, you're a bodybuilder, you can mess it up. So let's talk about the situations about the kidneys where we can use these values, this BUN and creatinine, to tell what's going on. Well, the BUN and creatinine don't mean much without one other value from the kidneys, and that's the urine-specific gravity. And what is urine-specific gravity? That's the measure of solutes. Remember that word? Salts and proteins and electrolytes in the solution. So you look in that refractometer, that little window, and you're measuring on one side proteins, and then that's on this scale. Maybe that's 0 to 10, I think. And then you have USG, and that's another scale. This is you looking through the refractometer, and your liquid on the glass thing creates a shadow there, clear and shadow, and the USG will be from 1000 up to 1050. So basically, that's in comparison to water. Is it equal to water? 10,000 is water. No solutes at all, right? Just plain old water, distilled water, with nothing in it, all the way up to 1050, which is what many cat urines, dog urines can be, full of proteins that your body's getting rid of, salts, urea, creatinine, all these things that the body is getting rid of. A little bit of sugar, sometimes unmeasurable, a little bit of blood, maybe, whatever's in there, right? Solutes. So the urine-specific gravity is really important because the kidney's first job is to concentrate the urine. So if I drink a big gulp, I know that I should pee a lot, right? Because I have drank a big gulp. But if I don't drink all day, I'm not going to have to pee all day. So it's very important is water balance. And we concentrate the urine, water balance. And so if you can't concentrate your urine, you're going to have dilute urine. So concentrated versus dilute, and then there's somewhere in the middle. So we consider concentrated greater than 1030. And dilute is basically definitively below 1018. Those are sort of the definitions. And in the between is a gray area. Now, that also depends on other things. Like if I say you're dehydrated because your gums are dry, it probably should be greater than 1030 most of the time. But that's a little thing. So the first job of the kidneys is to concentrate urine. When do you lose that ability? Well, you can give up a kidney, right? So if you have born with 2 kidneys, I can donate one, and I don't have any trouble doing that job. The first job, concentrating the urine, if you lose kidney function less than 33% of both kidneys working. So that means that basically you start with maybe, let's say you started with 100, that's not how many you have, but you started with 100 nephrons, which are like, think of it like brain cells. You start with a certain amount of brain cells, and as you age, you are losing them all the time. When you get down to 33 working, that's when you start to not be able to concentrate your urine because you don't have enough functioning units anymore. So that part of things is the first thing we need to look at is, do you have concentrated urine? So specific gravity is very important because that is, no matter what happens, really the most important thing is, can you concentrate your urine if we're looking at kidney function? The second thing to go, if you have your hurt kidney, is the toxins. Now, some people call that azotemia. So azotemia is the measurement of the BUN and creatinine that are elevated, one or both. And that's versus some people hear uremia. So uremia is the clinical symptom of those being increased. So that they're just a little bit different. Azotemia is in the blood, and this is actually in your body symptomatic. So azotemia means elevated BUN and creatinine. So how can that happen? Well, we tend to divide it up into things that happen before the kidney, pre-renal, renal, things that are happening at the level of the kidney, or post-renal. So what's post-renal and what's pre-renal? So before the kidney, before blood goes to the kidney, what is it doing? Well, it's in your circulation, right? It's getting pumped by your heart, and it's going to your whole body. This is a terrible body without a head. And then it gets made into urine, out the ureter. So pre-renal is everything that happens in your body before the blood gets to the kidney. Renal is everything that's happening on the level of the kidney. And post-renal is as it's making its way out to the bladder and to the outside world. So what could go wrong? Well, we know we have UO, urinary tract obstruction, urethral obstruction, CATs. We have bladder stones, could be obstructed. We have bladder rupture, could be leaking. We have ureteral stones, things get stuck there. So all kinds of things can happen, but that's officially post-renal or post-kidney. So these are the three categories of problems that we can have that we can define by how these things look. So let's say we got dehydrated because we got really sick with the stomach flu, and we had diarrhea at the same time. I ate some really bad food, or I have a flu, stomach flu, and so I'm really dehydrated. So what I should do if I'm normal is I should have very high urine concentration. I should hardly have to pee, and then these could go up. Now, they might one be up without the other. That would be milder, but if both are up, that's pretty severe dehydration. And what would I do? I would give myself fluids, either if I could drink it or I'd give an IV, and I would expect both of these to go to normal. Now, here's another situation. I have an ulcer, and so I have extra blood in my gut, and I digest it. And so I should have concentrated urine, and the BUN go up. Now, what happens if I have chronic kidney disease? So I might have this go up, and this might be watery. Let's say 10, 15. So that would count as watery urine. So what happens when I give IV fluids and try to fix it? Well, these might get a little better, but it really depends on how badly the kidneys are affected. Well, what about post-renal? Well, post-renal is hard because sometimes the urine does get concentrated and sometimes it doesn't. And it's not always very helpful. But you should physically know you have a problem there. And then if you have azotemia, you'd watch it and see if it got better. And you need a while to watch it because sometimes it doesn't always get better. So if you are doing a BUN and creatinine on an I-stat and it is elevated, first off is like how elevated is it? And second off is, do I need to get a urine-specific gravity? Now some of you may be saying, oh, urine-specific gravity, maybe now I understand why it's so important for us to get for all the toxin PETs, because I might have normal function, I might have normal kidney values, kidney toxin values, but if I don't know this number, I don't know where I'm starting. Because many times you can have a first step of dilute urine, but azotemia, I didn't tell you guys this, happens when you only have about 25% of the kidney function left. So it's important to kind of differentiate, am I starting with good kidneys or not? The only thing that makes it a little confusing sometimes is if a patient drinks a lot of water, sometimes they'll falsely drive themselves down. But those are the basics of the BUN and creatinine. I hope that's helpful. Kidney function is super complex and fun, and maybe we can do that a little bit more another time.